Okay, so in this part, we're going to talk about strategic planning. Now, you've appointed an executive director. You understand financial oversight. We have compliance oversight. That's also your responsibility. And then strategic planning is the other big piece that you will be doing as a board. Okay. Now, strategic planning can sound a little like, I don't know, scary to people. Like, well, what does that mean? What is this like? What does this involve? It doesn't have to be that complicated if you just understand that it's being proactive and being strategic, taking an evaluation of the reality of your situation, and that's everything from like, maybe your location, your employees, your staffing, your money, how money's coming in, how money's going out, any gaps that you have, any possibilities for improvement, any growth opportunities, you're taking an evaluation of all of those things, and you're just writing down a clear plan with who's going to do it, when they're going to do it, and what the accountability is going to be. So it doesn't have to be super complex, but the board should be involved in it. And this is because this is part of care of the organization as far as long-term thinking, long-term planning, making sure that the organization is sustainable, that it knows where it's going to the best of your ability, that it's not going too fast or too slow, that it's not missing major, areas of opportunity, that it doesn't have big gaps. All of these things are taking care of the organization, okay? And if you find any of that, how are you going to fix it, okay? Now, again, like I've said for a lot of things, the actual work for gathering all this information often ends up being done by the operational staff. But first, let's talk about what the steps are. Okay, so a strategic plan, let's start at the end and then back up. Okay, so a strategic plan can look like this. Here's just a template that I put together based on, my research and how to build one of these. And essentially, you reiterate your mission statement because that's your informing reason for existing. And it can be a little easy, remarkably easy, actually, to get kind of sidetracked and distracted by other things and forget that, oh, wait, that's not actually fulfilling our mission. So, we shouldn't be doing it. It might be a good opportunity, but it's not actually fulfilling our mission, so we shouldn't be working on it. So you want to reiterate your mission statement, why you exist. Your vision statement, what is our vision for this organization? Vision statement is usually a little more practical. What are your core values? Okay, if you haven't done this part before, you might have to spend a little time what are your most important core values as an organization? And they're probably going to be informed by your mission statement, right? But you might add some other things in there. And then if you want, you can just summarize all of that. We exist for this reason, to serve these people. And it is important to us to sustain, these values. Just a quick statement. This reminds you why you exist and what mission it is you're protecting. Okay. Now, where the work is in, and I have this laid out as a SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. There's other ways to do this. But this is just one of the popular methods of okay, we're going to step back and we're going to proactively take a look at everything. So you're looking at the strengths of your organization. What are you doing well? What do you do really well? And you're looking at all of these things on multiple levels. Your board, your executive staff, your operational staff, your families, the people that you're serving. It might be, you might look at actually human resources. You might look at financials. You might look at, your compliance systems. You might look at your programming. You might look at your building. Okay, you're going to look at these subcategories. So I would recommend that you brainstorm, you could probably easily come up with 6 or 8 subcategories of things that you actually do that make you exist, right? As well as the stakeholders. Okay, this is another key term with this, the stakeholders. Who are the people who hold stake in your organization. It's probably your board members. It's probably your staff. It's probably your families, the people that you're serving. It could be your community. Okay. So there's like two different pieces of this. There's like an internal where you as a board list those things. And then you say, okay, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And you're going to want to have your operational staff give input. You can do this a couple different ways. You might end up, you should go out and like survey these people, all the stakeholders, the families, the employees, and survey them specifically, maybe the students, the board members. Like, what do you think our strengths, weaknesses are, our opportunities and threats? Like, ask them those questions, but ask them specific questions. Like, do you feel adequately supported as a employee? Do you feel like we're delivering on our mission? Do you feel like we have good safety protocols, right? Like, you might be asking different groups of people those things. As far as like a survey, that's a really good way to get stakeholder input. But when you're doing it internally as a board, so to clarify that, you might look at it as like, we're going to sit in a board meeting and we're going to kind of do an internal like audit of our, SWOT analysis of what we know as a board. You're going to know your own self as a board the best. You might not know the rest of the operations quite as well, which is why you're going to do the stakeholder input. But your executive director is probably there. You might want to invite any other higher level, staff. If you're small, you might, and you only have 2 staff members, like just come and do it at one meeting or whatever. And you want their input. You want them to sit down with you and say, well, I really don't feel supported in this area, or I really feel like we're doing this so well and it's so rewarding. But I really think, I think we really have an opportunity over here. I keep hearing people talk about this, and I know we could deliver on that, and it's in alignment with our mission. Okay, so you're having this meeting where you do this. By the way, I recommend doing this in like a dedicated meeting, because it's probably going to take a couple hours, if not longer. So you might do like a strategic planning meeting every year where you have like a whole Saturday set aside and, get bagels and coffee and lunch and spend the whole morning just doing a strategic analysis plan. Okay, so the board sits down and does the SWOT analysis from what they know based on these categories that they know they have in their organization, okay? And so you might go to like 6, 7, 8 subcategories of your organization and list, do a SWOT analysis on each of those. What opportunities do we have? What threats are we facing? What are our strengths and weaknesses, okay? So you do that internally, keep that as a record. And then you also put together, your survey. You might do a focus group or something. Survey usually works pretty well. And you send that out to the other stakeholders. It might be donors. It might be, families. It might be the other staff. And then you're going to pull all of that together and you're going to zero in on not more than 3, maybe 5 priorities that you're seeing are gaps that you have, okay? Or opportunity, like, I shouldn't say gaps that you have. If they're gaps that you have, you don't want to have your whole strategic plan be reactive. So if all of your priorities are just reactive to like, oh, we have all these problems, that probably means you were like, you really needed a strategic plan like before. If you're just getting started, you've never done this before, that's fine. Like, go fill your gaps for sure. Make sure that your resources go into that if you have major glaring things that just aren't getting done or whatever. But as a general rule, your strategic plan shouldn't just be reactive. It should be also proactive, okay? So you want to maybe be setting a long-term goal. Like, we have this opportunity to reach this group of people, and we might not be able to do it this year, but if we can, build this programming, we can have it. We can be ready to do it by next year, or, maybe 2 years. Speaking of timelines, it's often good to do like a 1 year and then like a 3 year, or maybe a 1 and a 2 year. If you get much beyond 3 years, it's probably going to be a little more like visionary, vague, such as like, we want to own our own building someday or something like that. But like, and then we might have to scale that back. Like, if that's a plan, a goal that you have for like 5 years from now, which, by the way, don't just throw that out there. Why do you want to own your own building, right? Like, why? You should have stakeholder input as to why you want to do that. But then you have to scale that back. Like, well, we're going to have the programming necessary. We're going to have to cultivate a donor base. We're going to have to, do these things. And it's going to take 3 years to even get that foundation built. And then after that, we'll revisit our strategic plan and like keep moving. Okay. So if it's beyond like 3 years, you can write it down as like maybe your 5-year vision, but you're probably not going to be able to like put all of the like detailed plans for the next 5 years, but you probably could scale it back to like your first year and maybe your second or third year goals. Okay. So 1 year, 3 year, what are the priorities that you have based on your analysis? Okay. And like I said, some of them might be reactive, like, wow, we really need to take care of this. This is a top priority. This is a goal we have to do. And we have to accomplish this. But we also are going to go pursue this other thing, or we're going to proactively make sure this threat doesn't become a problem for us or whenever. Okay. So you take all that stakeholder input from yourself and from your other stakeholders out there through your surveys or your focus groups or your meetings, whatever. You gather all that information, you sit down and you look at it. And, maybe someone wants to volunteer to do this, or maybe your executive director is doing it, or somebody looks at all that information and just combs through it and finds out what is a recurring theme, what are you seeing from people that they are looking for or they want, or problems or opportunities or whatever, okay? And then you're going to narrow that down to a realistic, doable couple of things, maybe 3 to 5, could just be 2 or 3 goals that you have that you're going to prioritize. We're going to make sure this gets done. Okay, so those goals get written down. You're also going to break those goals down into tasks. And this is where your strategic plan actually becomes practical. You don't want to just sit it on a shelf like, oh yeah, we should take care of that. Let's write it down. Oh, yay. And then you like go home and nobody ever does anything about it. That's a useless strategic plan. So you want to break that down into tasks. Okay. And you want to know who's going to do them. You're going to want to know when, and you're going to want to have an accountability structure. Okay. So you might see, so let me give you an example. Let's say that you're, 2 years in, or you're a year in or whatever, and you're surveying. And what keeps coming up is that you're having trouble with your building. Okay. Like there's not enough space. You're having conflict with whoever you're sharing it with. The rent went up and you don't have the money for it. And this is like coming up from a lot of places. Okay. And everyone's aware that the building is a problem. Okay. And it's just like causing headaches left and right. Okay. So your goal on a broader level might be to get a secure, sustainable building situation. Okay. Now there's a couple different ways that could play out. You might need to move to a different building. You might need to, clear up communication channels. You might need to, whatever. Your 1 year might be different tasks, like, some modifications to the way that you use the classroom, you communicate with whatever. But then your 3 year might be developing new programming, if possible, or cultivating your donors so that you can, which is going to probably take a couple years of cultivating donors if you don't have any at all. You're going to cultivate donors. Now, who's going to do that? Cultivating donors is not an easy task, right? So who's going to cultivate donors? Who has time to do that, right? And boards, you really should be helping with this. But you don't need to do that if the building situation is fine. You have the money, right? But if this is a big problem and the only thing you can come up with is we need a different building, it's going to cost all this money, or we need to be able to rent, commercial space that's all ours that we're not sharing, or whatever. Or maybe you want to be able to purchase, that's if you're brand new, you're probably going to take several years to be able to purchase a building, but who knows? It depends. Just make sure you're realistic about it. So you might need to do a building campaign or whatever, but what are the tasks that need to be done? Maybe you need to cultivate donor relationships, which might mean you need to, hold an informational meeting. It might mean you need to reach out to 5 community leaders. It might mean, right? So you're breaking this down into what do you actually have to do to cultivate donor relationships if you have decided that you want to try to purchase a building in a few years because you're having building problems. Okay, so see how you took the stakeholder input, you found the priority, fixed the building problem, and then you broke it down into like a goal, and then you broke it down into tasks. And, there's kind of like 3 levels of goals I just talked about, like fix the building problem, and then like raise money for a new building. Those are like there's a way to accomplish the goal. And then there's tasks under that. And, that means cultivating donor relationships and developing programming to sustain a building, which might mean extra programming, summer programming, like sharing, like subletting or whatever. But what are those tasks? How long are they going to take, and who's going to do them? Okay. So if you get down to this and you say, well, we had all these great ideas, but we don't know who's going to do it. Like, and the people who are supposed to do it might be like, oh, I can't do that. I don't have enough time for that. I don't know the right people. I don't know how to do it. Okay. Well, now you got to talk about that. Don't put that on your strategic plan if you can't fill out all of these realistically. Okay. And then when, and again, duty of care, make sure you do your research on this. Okay. Is it realistic to do these things? Like, for instance, a building campaign takes a long time. Like, it takes a couple of years, and that's if you already have donors cultivated. Like, it takes a while. So like, what's realistic? When is it going to be done? Who's going to do it? What are the tasks? But it could also be smaller goals. Like, maybe your teachers feel like they need more training. Okay, so a goal, you're hearing this a lot. They don't know how to handle certain situations. They feel a little lost when they start. Okay, so a goal would be to develop teacher training materials and training. Okay, and someone says, well, yeah, but we should pay them. We don't have enough money for that. Okay, so let's hold a fundraiser so we can raise $1,000 so that we can train our teachers give them time, maybe have a speaker come in, whatever. Okay, so from your stakeholder input, you're getting this need or this opportunity, and you're creating a goal, what tasks need to happen, who's going to do them, like who has the time to develop the training materials, who's going to look at the budget and make sure that figure out where this money is going to come from for the training, who's going to hold the fundraiser and plan it and make it happen. Okay. When is this going to happen? Okay. And then you're going to check in throughout the year on how each of these things is happening. Okay. So that is basically what a strategic plan is. All right. So this is something that you can do once and then check in on. But if you have, like, let's say a 3-year plan and a 1-year plan, in between those times, you're probably just checking in to see how each of the tasks are getting accomplished, whether they're getting accomplished, how they're doing it, like smaller intervals, whatever you wrote on your page here. But then, like, let's say you accomplish your 1 year, and then you have your next strategic planning meeting a year, and you say, well, we accomplished most of this for our 1-year plan. This is great. How are we doing on our 3-year plan? Do we need to also create one more 1-year plan? Okay. Obviously, there's different ways you could do this, different timelines you could do this, but that's basically what a strategic plan is. Mission and vision statement, core values, summarize all of that. Do some sort of SWOT style analysis internally and externally with all of your stakeholders. Do it for each of the subcategories of your organization, okay? And then comb through all of that, narrow it down to 3 to 5 goals, priorities, probably on a 1 and a 2 or 1 and a 3-year basis. So you might have 2 different strategic plans. Make sure you break it all the way down to tasks, who, when, accountability, and then put it on your calendar to check in. It's part of your board meetings to check in how you're doing with these things, okay? So this is something that you are responsible for to make sure that the organization is sustainable and it is set to continue to succeed in the future, and that all of your compliance and your responsibilities as an organization are being taken care of and there aren't big gaps. Okay? So hopefully that made sense, and we will see you next.